it's right across the spectrum. People are trying to rethink education, health, whatever it is their thing, relationships, everything. And this is the change that in a way is destined to come. The question is, what do we do with it? And as many of you know, I refer to I look at it like we're going through a global puberty process, yeah? And if you look at that just objectively, from before until after is significantly different. You know, a 12-year-old and a 20-year-old, no comparison. You know, we've metamorphosed, we've changed significantly. And this is the sort of change that's happening to humanity.
That was Hamish Mackay, and you're listening to The Regenerative Journey.
From wherever we are, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia, recognising their continuing connection to this land, its waterways, the stars in the skies since time immemorial. We pay our respects to the elders, knowledge holders, and to all the generations of First Nations peoples who have nurtured their unceded sovereign lands for over 80,000 years and continue to do so today.
G'day, I'm your host Charlie Arnott, an 8th generational Australian regenerative farmer. And in this podcast series, I'll be diving deep and exploring my guests' unique perspectives on the world so you can apply their experience and knowledge to cultivate your own transition to a more regenerative way of life.
Welcome to The Regenerative Journey with your host Charlie Arnott.
Hamish, we're on.
We're good.
Welcome back to the Regenerative Journey, because you were a guest in season 2, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
And we started out here and we went around the front, getting away from the wind, and we finally got it worked out. Welcome
With
back.
the help of your socks.
Well, that's right. We dealt with the wind with the socks. Good old socks. Now, I'm still getting used to the squadcasty thing. So do you want to start by telling us why you've been here for the last couple of days? What have you been doing here at Hamish?
Okay, well, I've actually been, I'm tracking Uli Herter, who's the leader of the biodynamic movement globally, with Jean-Paul Florent. And so I've been down in Victoria, did a workshop in Bairnsdale, attended a couple of events in Melbourne, and now I'm heading for Queensland, and I'm at Hanaminno. I've been making the manure concentrate, which is the cowpat pit that we make in the workshops. And I make quite a lot of it here at Hanaminno. I made 8 pits yesterday.
Can I just say too, Hamish, I didn't give you a scale. I know it was one wheelbarrow. I gave you a hand to get across that 50 metres. It's probably a bit over 50 metres to the pit. Hamish, as I keep saying, he's 110. He looks 75 because biodynamics just are working for him. Big day yesterday. 8 solid wheelbarrows full of cow shit mixed and put in the pit, and we're going to put some preps in there this morning. That's a big effort. Something you're used to, and that's no wonder you're so.
But I enjoy doing it. Yeah. I think this is one of the issues that's coming up. On my way up from Melbourne, I called on Jeff Everett, who's at Shepparton, and he's in the business world, and he was saying, it's not satisfying. He said, I sort of feel like a prostitute. And I think there's more and more people who are actually doing good work, but actually it's not what they enjoy. Yeah.
It's not purposeful. It's
not purposeful. It's making money. Okay, we all have to make money. But what I see is there's more and more people realising that while they're doing very well in whatever field they're in, it's actually not satisfying. And this is the major shift that's happening in the world. And I'm pretty chuffed about 2024 because I've always, as you know, I've called my business Biodynamics 2024 because for 40 years I've set 2024 as a line in the sand that this is when change will be happening. And it's not all called biodynamics, it's regenerative, it's right across the spectrum. People are trying to rethink education, health, whatever it is their thing, relationships, everything. And this is the change that in a way is destined to come. The question is, what do we do with it? And as many of you know, I refer to I look at it like we're going through a global puberty process, yeah? And if you look at that just objectively, from before until after is significantly different. You know, a 12-year-old and a 20-year-old, no comparison. You know, we've metamorphosed, we've changed significantly. And this is the sort of change that's happening to humanity. And you know, Rudolf Steiner was the one that has given us the greatest insights into this change so we can actually handle them in our own situation, whatever that might be. And just as one of the issues is that in 1924, when he gave the agriculture course, he spoke to the youth. And you know, we tend to think of youth as maybe being under 25 or under 35, depending how old you are. But actually what he was really referring to was that the people born after 1899, because 1899 was when the end of the Dark Age, Kali Yuga, which had lasted 5,000 years, and the beginning of the New Age of Light. And more people will be born with different capacities, and we need to be ready to facilitate those capacities. And I have a suspicion that there's an echo of the 1899 happening in 1999. In other words, if we watch the people coming through who are born after 1999, they're looking for something totally different. And if we can't measure up and provide that for them, we're going to be in for some pretty chaotic times. And again, Rudolf Steiner gave us lots of hints of how to go about these various challenges we're facing. But he basically said, these changes will happen in the sense that also like puberty will happen for any normal healthy development. So it's only going to be a matter of whether we consciously, how we consciously choose to manage the process, or we'll end up in more and more chaos and conflict. And, while that's happening, I'm also looking and witnessing people who are making changes. And in agriculture, it's not all biodynamic. I can be personally sad about that, but that's largely because of the inability of the biodynamic movement to behave like adults. Just because we're into biodynamics doesn't mean we're better human beings or we're like everyone else. And so I'm not greatly fussed what form of regenerative agriculture people are engaging in. What I am fascinated and supportive of people beginning the process of change. Where they'll end up, that's a whole other question. And even, I think I've mentioned this before, but the CEO of Nestle is saying, he wants to take Nestle regenerative. Well, his version of regenerative and mine may not align, but what I read in that situation is he's reading the future, and there's a generation coming through that want ethical products. And again, we can all differ on what ethical, but that shift there's an intensification of the number of people looking for these things. And the big corporates, those ships take decades to turn around. And so the fact that he's talking it tells me he's reading the consumer market. And that's ultimately our sort of democratic process. Every time we spend $1, we create whatever it is we're buying. And so there's a lot of politics about the environment and all sorts of things, and yet people don't change their ways themselves. And it's not easy anymore because you try and buy food without plastic. That's a bit of a challenge. On the other side, technology is pretty amazing because they're now coming up with microbes, etc., that will eat the plastic. So there's nothing, I don't think we need to be fearful of the future. We just have to apply the technology in the service of humanity, not just in service of a few. And so I get, when I'm out there making the manure concentrate, these are the things that inspire me, and I physically enjoy the work. I going out and mixing with a few cows and collecting their manure and taking it and stirring it up and putting it in a pit. It all sounds a bit wacky, but that the cows come and they want to know what I'm doing and
what are you doing with my food?
And so I really enjoy that. And I think farms again need, the more we can make farms the centre of community again, which they were, because that's where creativity, the creation of new substances and new things came from farms. If you take that away, okay, we're digging up coal and iron ore and what have you, but that, and I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, but that in itself isn't creative. What we do with the iron ore and coal is creative, absolutely. But in farming, we're actually creating new substances. And the more people who can be involved in the creation of those substances, the more they will respect the clothes they wear or the food they eat or the houses they live in, because they actually have a relationship to how the wool came to be suitable for my waistcoat, or where the timber comes from their house. And all of that, the separation of our life from these life processes is fairly recent. I'm young enough to remember horse-drawn ploughs and things like that when I was small. So, the change from horse-drawn to tractors is essentially in my lifetime. It happened before that, but the major global sort of industrialization of agriculture has happened in my lifetime. And one of the sort of elders of the biodynamic movement in Europe, he speaks, Manfred Klett, he speaks about the death of agriculture in the 1960s, when the whole green revolution came through and everything went chemical. And that's also a human process, death and resurrection sort of thing. So now is the time when we have to resurrect agriculture, not by going back to the old ways, but actually looking at how this works into the future. And that's what Rudolf Steiner seeded to us, gifted to us, the way of thinking that we will need to adopt to get through this process, this time. And as I said, not everyone in the regen movement is biodynamic or understands biodynamic. The few that do, they're important, but everyone's important. And the people are changing. People who 3-4 years ago wouldn't countenance regenerative are now talking about it. And I was down in Bairnsdale recently, and there's a number of people came to the workshop, and they've observed people who've been doing biodynamics for 3 or 4 years, and they notice that their pastures are greener when things go dry. So they're leaning over the fence and saying, "What are you doing?" 10 years ago, the response would have been, "You must have got a shower rain that we didn't get." In other words, people were not interested in looking over the fence and asking a question. That's the big change. Those are the important changes. When people start to ask questions, to notice and ask questions, as opposed to noticing and blocking it, sort of thing. Because notice it, they do.
I like you mentioned there before, Hamish, every time you spend $1, you're creating what you're buying. That's great, isn't it? It's because you're creating a demand, which then gets back to obviously the producer going, oh, I can, they got the money in the bank essentially, and then there's the pretty clear message that I need to do more of this. So the choices we make every day in our buying choices, we can buy the processed food, which sends a message back to whoever that yep, people want this. I mean, it's an obvious thing, but I like that phrase. Every time you spend $1, you're creating what you're buying. That's pretty good. Back to the puberty, and I love the idea of mankind, humanity going through that. There's always puberty is a little synonymous with, as are all changes, often a pain. It's a period of potential pain, and I guess
it's messy.
It can be messy, yeah, but it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be negative.
Too messy or negative, doesn't it? And then so from a child, their ability to address and deal with change, because it's happening, hormonally and physically and mentally, I guess too. As a child, the parenting to that point is important. We've sort of got to say, yep, puberty is happening. We can't stop puberty. We have to, but if we can prepare and we can kind of guide through that puberty period, then we still can get to the other side, but we might we might have actually benefited from the relevance of puberty, as opposed to it being like a period of like stepping, almost going backwards, or like setting up the trajectory of not evolving. I guess it could be a devolving process for a lot of people.
Well, one of the things that that's very topical at the moment is violence and domestic violence, and you can almost say that's where people have got stuck in that wildness, that uncontrollable aspect of themselves that happens in puberty. And as you say, if the lead up has been sound, the management of it is sound, and a clear picture of what an adult looks like, we can help the individual go through that process without losing it. But we're getting more and more people who are getting stuck in that emotional maelstrom and can't get out of it. And then we've got all the marketing stuff, pushing pressures on, whether you buy a new car or house or whatever it is, go on holiday to somewhere you don't need to go to. And that amps up the pressure on people to keep up with the Joneses, sort of thing, in the old language. And this is another aspect of biodynamics, because when I work with mentally and chronically ill people in the UK for 5 years, the lead doctors there were telling us that all mental illness has a physiological basis. In other words, there's some organ not up to scratch. And the keeping our organs healthy is largely a nutritional question. So I'm not saying that nutrition is the answer to violence, but it certainly helps, because look at yourself when you're feeling depleted, fatigued, not inwardly in good space, and you've been drinking too much coffee or too much tea or too much beer or whatever it is, and you're not inwardly in balance. Someone can say something unfortunate to you, and you react in a way that afterwards you say to yourself, "What was I thinking?" And on whatever level you experience that, that's what's being amplified in society. There are people who are not inwardly stable, and nutrition is one of the elements that can help that. And it might be just enough to stop people tipping over the edge and doing something that really is not just regrettable, but terrible.
Yes, it's a nutrition, and I guess getting back to the the nutrition as a child through to get to puberty, they're gearing up their body for future, but also that current ability to get through a day at school without having meltdowns or just it's about habit forming, isn't it? And parents creating a standard in some ways. Like I know that the school that Lordy goes to, Super Dupers are quite the thing. They're those tubed in plastic with ice and they're coloured and there's God knows what. And, you know, we have battled with not battled with the school, but we've made some pretty strong suggestions about how that might be able to change all that. But it's such an embedded kind of thing for the kids. Lordy sneaks a few in every now and again, and we can tell when he does. And, you know, and then I imagine teachers might often wonder why the kids are ratty after lunch. You know, because they've been topped up in all sorts of colours, you know, and so anyway, and you know, so I guess getting back to.
And again, the good news from my perspective is that, you know, my journey to where I am, in a way, started at the Demeter Bakery in Sydney, where we were making, you know, wholemeal, biodynamic, stone ground breads and all that sort of stuff, and we couldn't expand the business because growers weren't growing the food. So that's why Cheryl Kemp and myself and others sort of departed the city, went to the country to encourage people to grow the stuff. Now we're in the blessed situation. There's more and more good quality produce being grown. So now's the time to start going back down to the city end and alerting people to actually there is some decent food out there, and create linkages so we're not going through the big corporate models, but we're actually creating relationships between growers and consumers and building those networks. And I think that's going to be the next phase we're in. And you know, you're sending your beef and Stuart McWilliam and with their butchery in Crookwell or whatever, you know, there's these things, these seeds of the future are starting to germinate. So I'm, you know, not disheartened. It's going to be serious work, but the people are turning up to do it. And you went to a conference in Melbourne where there was alternative. Speak to that a little bit.
Well, so that was, I'm just looking up, Discover Regenerative is a new program. It's a initiative of MacDoc Foundation and Open Food Network. And it is about connecting producers with consumers or those looking for the food and those who are producing it. So it's a bit of a network, a bit of a directory aside. Yeah, but that's a good point. Stop it. So you're out of focus here again. Why is that here? So
I still look pretty old.
You don't. We might be able to get the focusing on you again. Regenerative Health Summit. So we had some fantastic speakers down there. Forgive me if I forget anyone. Dr. Jalal Khan, who's a quantum dentist. He's based in Sydney. Dr. Anthony Chaffee, he's over in WA, in Perth. He is all about nutrition and diet, and he's a strong advocate of carnivore diet. Dr. Pran Yoga Nathan, who was there, and he's just so. I love that he can just go down rabbit holes and pull out the good stuff. He was there talking about, I guess, the state of the nation and the state of humanity in terms of nutrition and mental, where our mental state is. Natalie West, she was talking about nutrition as well. She's fantastic. She's based in Melbourne. Who also was there? Dr. Max Gallane, who I've interviewed as well. He was down there. He was talking about circadian rhythm, and which is fascinating me at the moment. That's why I sometimes wear my little daytime blue blocker glasses and nighttime things. Who else is that? 6, and there was myself. So that was, hopefully I've covered everyone there. It was fantastic. Now the fact that there were 4 doctors out of 6 speakers, talking about nutrition, talking about the habits that we might have, and I wrapped up the day with my presentation was what's the new normal. You know, and it's lovely to hear that, you know, that included in that day was 4 doctors talking about, and they all started, we were talking about last night, they all started with their conventional kind of education in those different fields. But for whatever reason, there was a pivot, there was a point where there was a tension event or or a number of them that got them thinking and asking better questions, and then off they go down different avenues. And thank God they are, and they did. And I've no doubt, and I know that a number of them who are there on the day, it hasn't been without pushback from patients or their fraternity of other doctors. That's just a symptom of the courage to change direction and really, live and speak and practice their values.
And you can read about people prepping, as they call it, getting ready for the end time sort of thing. But to me, prepping is about creating the communities, community networks who, who's who in the zoo, who's got what, who can do what, so that we look after each other. Yeah. Whereas the sort of traditional model of prepping is you store up for yourself, and it'll be interesting to see what happens because when if the world goes that bad, are you going to just look after yourself, or are you going to look after each other? And to me, having the skill to grow food is the greatest prepping we can do. Yeah, so that when the superphosphate and the chemicals and the drugs and the drenches and what have you all stop, the fact that you can keep going and feed other people, that's going to be by far the greatest form of prepping we can do.
And of value to humanity and your community and yourselves, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because there's no better thing to be focused around and to be to be the centre of a community is the food that we can grow and can share.
And back to sort of Nestle and Regenerative, it will be corrupted. That's the way of the world. But we've got to continually be renewing it. If it means giving it a new name, and to me, biodynamics is more of a transformative agriculture. That doesn't mean anything to many people today, so that's fine. But maybe that will become the next word, sort of thing. It doesn't matter. The fact is that there's always the leading group, and they'll need to set something going. When that gets corrupted, let that go. You don't fight to save it. You let that go, and then create the new image. Yeah. So that the people who are really alert will pick up on the fact that this is going forward. Whereas some people try and sort of, a good idea arises and it becomes an image that has to be maintained. That's a bit like trying to stay 30-year-old, that doesn't work.
Well, you're doing a good job with that, staying 30.
So, so I'm fairly optimistic about, as I say, when I say optimistic, I don't mean it's not going to be messy, but I see some pretty awesome people right across the spectrum who are making the changes that that will be fruitful into the future.
There's many things I like about you, Hamish, and one of them is that your attitude to change, but not so much change, but your attitude to as you mentioned there, unless there's so many things that you sort of are aware of and kind of have lots of wisdom around, but in terms of food production, regenerative agriculture, you're not dogmatic about, and we did talk about it last night, like there are so many people doing wonderful things, and it's not, anthroposophical, it's not biodynamic, but it's just good, solid, contribution to humanity and their communities and themselves and their families. And you're not going, if you don't do bloody biodynamics, you forget the rest, that's all rubbish. Like, you have your, as you said earlier, you might be personally sad that it's not all about biodynamics. However, and I don't even believe that because you're a realist, and it's almost like, as long as it's about food, it's about working with nature, it's about working with your community, it's about nutrition, it's about working with yourself, your I am, then that's the important thing, not putting a label of biodynamics or organic or regenerative agriculture on it. That is not the important thing. And, and I have personally, not as much as you, because I know you've had a history of kind of the experience, over many years, and I have experienced in the biodynamic world pushback from people who are really dogmatic, are really if you're not doing it this way and you can't do it here and you've got to do it there, and if you're not following the rules, then it's not proper biodynamics. I've experienced that. I've also experienced that in other fields of regenerative ag. I mean, in life generally, but regenerative ag in terms of, if you're not doing this particular practice, and if you haven't read the book and doing it as per that educator, then it's just not. You're actually harming things. You're actually not doing. You're not upholding the rules of the expectation of that particular practice, and you're actually doing some harm to the environment because these rules and these things were put in place because they work. And if you're doing that, it's almost blasphemous. And look, that's life. But as I said, you are not prone to the dogma that so many other practitioners of, again, let's keep it to agriculture.
Look, I try and teach biodynamics, what I call from the big picture, and a traditional, in other words, fairly close to Rudolf Steiner's lectures. But I really encourage people to go out and experiment. That's why I teach it try and teach it that way, so you get the thinking, so then you can apply your own version of that thinking into your enterprise. And my sort of golden rule: if you do something different and it works, come and tell us, so that we can share that. And if you do something different and it doesn't work, come and tell us so we can share that. Because as more and more people are doing it, we'll develop more skills, more capacities, more nuances into the whole thing. And that's coming from the people doing it, not from the people teaching it, so to speak. And that's critical. So that's why I don't have anything to do with certification, because that's where legitimately there are rules, because the consumer wants to know certain facts about the food that they're buying and maybe paying more for. So that's legitimate in my view. But from where I'm at, I'm trying to get people to have the courage to have a go, and start their learning journey. And that's one of the sort of things about biodynamics. Every farm is a farm individuality. And I was working with a group recently, and they want to get a farmer and get stuff happening. And I said, yeah, but these things take time. If you buy a new farm and you get a new farmer, it's going to take 7 years at least for that farmer to really get to know that land. And I said, anyone who's been a parent, you get this new shiny little wonder in your hands, and it takes time to work out who it is. Mm-hmm. And if you have more than one child, each one's different. So each one, you've got to work out who they are and what the relationship is. And anyone who buys a farm, that's a similar process. You've got to get to know the farm, and the farm in a way needs to get to know you. So it's not mechanical. That's where the industrial agriculture has sort of set us up, that here's the formula, this is what you do, this is what you buy, this is when you do it, and it becomes a mechanical process. And you as the farmer actually become just the mechanic. Yeah. And that's a different order of farming.
Conscious of time, we've got to put some preps in. I've got a stock agent turning up pretty soon. A plug for the biodynamic workshop we're putting on here at Hamish, the 21st, 22nd of June. It's a Friday, Saturday. I think it's the first time we've done a straddling the weekend sort of kind of thing. So we hope that appeals to more people, insofar as you're only sort of skipping work for one day of the week, and it's only one day of the weekend. Because the 2 days in a week or the whole weekend, that often really takes out a whole chunk of opportunity for people to attend. There will be a farm tour on the Thursday, 3 till 5. We'll do a bit of a tour around. We show you some of the stuff that we won't get to within the actual 2 days of the workshop. We haven't got anything planned for spring yet, so that's why I'm saying to people, it may well be just our only one we do at Hamish this year. So don't muck around. It could be 12 months till we get another one back at Hamish. It's kind of our signature workshop. Venue. The food will be good. The company will be even better. And you'll learn all about the principles, practices and philosophy of biodynamics. In the mornings we do theory and sort of inside work with plenty of crowd participation and engagement, and also in the afternoons of both days we will then be outside doing some of the hands-on stuff. You'll get shit on your hands. You'll be. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. Even if it goes in your face, that's not bad either. So we'll be doing plenty of that, plenty of hands-on stuff, with the whole intention being that you go home knowing and understanding and feeling confident about immediately going home and doing something that is of benefit to your farm, your business, your garden, your orchard, your verge outside your street. This is not just for farmers. We have always have an interesting mix of farmers and gardeners, and even interested parents who don't even have necessarily a garden much or a farm, and also we're getting more teachers, which is awesome, and also kids. Like, we encourage kids to come along, especially teenagers, where they're at that sort of stage, they're curious, they're sort of finding their way, and with parents encouraging them to be exposed, to be privy to what we talk about. I think that's really, we've had some great kids who have come through, done the course with their parents, and they are, really, they're really involved. They're contributing in their own way to their own, their garden. I'm sure they're asking better questions of their parents' buying habits too, as a result. So we encourage all of that, and go to charliearnott.com.au to the event page, excuse me, to get your tickets. We will be limiting tickets, so don't muck around. It's only 50, no, it's a month away. Month and a half away. So yeah, get your tickets bought, secure your seat. The farm tour on the day before is free. There's no extra charge for that. And also accommodation is kind of limited around here too. So if you want to get on board locally and not have to drive too far every night, then get yourselves booked in now.
Yeah, and if I can just sort of reiterate, to pay attention to the people who were born after 1999. I'd be interested to see what observations you guys are making, whatever age, whether it's your children, grandchildren, or what have you. Because these are important things. There's lots of rhythms we don't notice. And I had a conversation the other day, and this lady perked up and she said, "That's amazing. I've got two daughters, one born before and one after, and they're very different." Now, that might be serendipity, I don't know. But again, if we get enough people watching, we might get a clearer picture of what's going on.
Love it. Hamish, this has been wonderful. I'm really enjoying not just our conversations, but the short, sharp ones we're having in this sort of format as part of our season of this season 8, where we're changing our format and having longer form interviews, but between them we're sneaking in these little ad-lib, off-the-cuff chats on this tech that's actually working really well. Saves me having to put all of those bloody microphones and decks and all sorts of stuff.
This
works pretty well, isn't it?
Charlie's socks get a bit,
Yeah, they're a bit much, especially the unwashed ones. And I can, as long as I've got, I'm on the line, I can do this anywhere. I can do it in the paddock. And with these little snazzy little numbers, the wind's not a problem either. Hamish, lovely. We better go.
Okay.
Perhaps I've got to go and meet a stock agent.
Go and do some work.
We'll talk.
Thank you.
Talk soon.
Yeah. Well done.
This podcast is produced by Rhys Jones at Jaeger Media. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to subscribe, share, rate and review. For more episode information, please head over to www.charliearnott.com.au.